Hello everyone. Welcome to Cabin Fever Crochet with me, Helene here. Thank you so much for joining me today for my tutorial on these cute little pumpkins that I created. I work them so many different ways with different hook sizes and a few different types of yarn just to figure out to create these in the most easiest yet versatile way, and that way you can customize them using different elements, what you might have on hand. I'm not going to give you specific measurements on the finished size on each because that will vary depending on your gauge, your tension, and the type of yarn that you are using. With what I'm going to show you, you'll have 3 different sizes and 2 different ways that you can make it, because I created this little stem here to look like it is actually growing out of the pumpkin, as pumpkins do. And then also you can use a piece of a stick here that I have. I also put some twine on it, just regular old jute twine. And you could use a cinnamon stick for that matter. Wouldn't that smell wonderful? And a lot of these types of things you can just find at your craft store, little leaves that you could attach if you want to. And also I thought, wow, wouldn't mulling spices be nice? You could just put a little bit of whole cloves and cinnamon bits and pieces that are in mulling spices, put them in a little organza bag, cinch that, and that would be like a little sachet that you can put on the inside before you close the bottom. So as far as yarns go, after playing with different ones, for this pumpkin here, I used some old Red Heart Super Saver from like 5 years ago. It worked up well for this, but it did not give very good stitch definition as much as I wanted, but because of the acrylic versus more of a natural fiber and how smooth this is, whereas this really fuzzes up. One thing about the fuzzy part was that it did camouflage and blend with the inside, but you don't get the same stitch definition. Here I used Red Heart Soft yarn, and on the stem on this one I used Lion Brand 24/7, a mercerized cotton. And this yarn also gives a tighter effect because it's less stretchy as opposed to mostly a cotton yarn. So it just depends on the type of yarn, the gauge, how worsted it is. But overall I recommend like a light worsted number 4. What I'm going to work in is the Premier Everyday Anti-Pilling yarn. This is in the color Clay Tones, still available. This yarn calls for an I 5.5 millimeter. I am going down 1 hook size. I haven't made one up in this yarn yet, so we are going to see how that comes together. And I suggest 1 stitch marker. That would be very helpful. Make a slip knot, okay? However you do yours. And for the beginning chain, since it's so short for all 3, you don't need to go up a hook size for that, okay? So for the small, we're going to do 11 chains, the medium 15, and the large you can do 17 or 19 if you want an even bigger pumpkin. And if you'd like to make gourds, then just add extra chains at the beginning to the height that you would like, and then you would decrease in the center of the gourd and graduate on up to the top in a similar way as we will do for the base of our stem that I will show you when we get there. Oh, another thing, you might want a pen and paper or something to write with now. You can pause this because I'm going to be giving you the measurements and tips and ideas on how to customize your own as we go. All right, so let's just get into it. All right, so for the small, chain 11. Okay, so into the second chain from the hook, work into the back bumps, roll over your chain, and into the raised bumps on the back sides we're going to work into for the beginning. Yarn over, second chain from hook, work a half double crochet, all right, and a half double crochet in each chain all the way across. So far so easy, right? Okay. So that's going to give you 10 half double crochets all the way across. And if you're new to crochet and you have a hard time finding the end half double crochet, because we are only chaining one at the end, we're not chaining two, that's going to give you very even edge on both sides. The first half double crochet is going to curve and shrink down a little bit, so I don't want you to miss that as you work back and forth each row, and then you're going to wind up shrinking your work and losing some stitches. So you can take the stitch marker for now and just pop that into each end if you want to, but just keep an eye out for that when you get to the end and make sure that you don't accidentally miss that, and then you can always double check and count your stitches to be sure. All right, so for row 2, and this is just 2-row repeat, all we're going to do back and forth, chain 1 and turn, half double crochet into the first stitch through both loops, the front and the back loop. Okay, go through both, and in each stitch across except for the very last one, do a half double crochet into the back loop, the loop farthest away from you, the back loop only. Okay, half double crochet across, back loop. Okay, my second to last stitch, and when you get to the end, work a half double crochet through both loops again. Okay, row 1, row 2. Now repeat row 1, chain 1 and turn, and work 1 half double crochet in each stitch all the way across. And you are going to maintain your same stitch count for each row going all the way across for this portion of our little pumpkin for each size that you are working. Okay, one more time for row 2, chain 1 and turn, work a half double crochet through both loops of the first and through the last, and each stitch across in between you will work half double crochet into the back loop. Okay, to the end of row 2 again, half double crochet into the last stitch going through both loops. And this is all you're going to do, back and forth, back and forth. Repeat rows 1 and 2, chain 1 and turn. You work a half double crochet through both loops all the way across. When you get to the end, okay, you chain 1 and turn. You do your half double crochet through both loops in the first and in the last, and in between, half double into the back loop only. So for the size small, the mini, work 20 rows. For the medium, 24. For the large, 28. And as you carry on, you will see the ridges develop on the front and on the back, and depending on the type of yarn you're using, it will appear differently. So that way, when you see the full length or width of your rows, then it'll be easier to determine which side that you like best, or you can do one little pumpkin in the front and one in the back just to mix that up a little bit. All right, I will see you back when I have finished. Do not cut your yarn when you get to the end. We are going to continue on with that before we change it up. I did my best to work this all in one piece. Okay, I will see you in just a bit. Oh, and if you hear the background, we have a little bit of chainsaw ambiance music going on, taking care of some trees and branches. Can't help that. So we're just going to roll with it because I wanted to get this going and up since we're already here near mid-October, so you can make these and enjoy them throughout the fall season. And they make fun little gifts too. I'm back. That sure worked up quickly in this really mini one. But if you think, well, that's going to be short, remember now we're going to add the center portion and then the stem. Okay, so when you count your rows, if you're not familiar with counting the rib, and we started with 1 and we end with 1, and so what I usually do is I count the 2's in the center and across. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19, and 20. Okay? And for the stem portion, you may need to go down a hook size to get in there kind of tight. I just want to give you a heads up now because I forgot to do that earlier. And then again, now here's the part where you decide which side you prefer to be on the outside. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and make the right side be my outside. So whatever is going to be your outside, that will be your new right side. Okay, so put the 2 sides together. And because the seam is going to be on the inside with the stuffing, you won't see it. So what we're going to do, chain 1, and then slip stitch through both loops on both sides of your work. And then you just slip stitch through, and don't slip stitch tight. Do that loosely. You can go up a hook if you need to. And that's all you're going to do here is just slip stitch through both loops on both sides all the way across. And then we're going to do a little decrease once we get to the inside top portion. All right, so then now turn your work right side out again. Because we worked half double crochets, the number of stitches that we need to do all the way around will be 1.5 times the number of rows. This mini is 20 rows, so 20 plus half that will give me 30 stitches all the way around. And again, your stitch marker is going to come in handy. So you can either just fold that in half from where your seam is, and you can see how nicely that blends on the outside. And then you can mark, here's the center, and here's our beginning slip knot. All right, so you just mark all the way across, and that's going to give you your center point, because it has to be divisible by certain numbers in order to get our little spikes evenly all the way across. So you can just place a mark and know that this is where you will have your 15th half double or single crochet, excuse me, and then we're going to work single crochets the same number all the way around. So if you are working the medium, you worked 24 rows, so then you will have 36 single crochets all the way around, and then you can mark your midpoint. That would be 18. Okay, do you see what I'm doing? 24 rows, half of that is 12. 24 plus 12 is 36. That gives you 1.5 times the number of your rows. And then your 18, of course, is half of the 36 for your midway point. All right, and same for size large. 28 rows. Half of the 28 is 14. Okay, so that is going to be 42 single crochets all the way around. So at your halfway point, you will have 21. Okay? You can feel free to pause, rewind to your heart's content as much as you need to do that. And I just tucked, for now, my tail end from our beginning inside just to keep that out of my way. You can also crochet a few stitches around that if you like. All right, so just going to chain one and then single crochet evenly around, which is pretty much in each stitch. Some are going to be more elongated. Just go into the stitches that are more like a full stitch where you have both a front and a back loop. If you have too wide of a gap, then this is where you're going to put in another stitch, and then you just count your number. And if you have to, just say if you wind up short, just put an extra one in when you get up to here. I mean, it's going to work out fine, as long as you don't have to do too many of those and your stitches are not bunched up. Okay, so I'm going to work mine, and then I will meet you around back at the beginning, and then I'm going to go ahead, we're going to change colors and then do our spiking and our center portion. And yes, I realized I got distracted by the dogs and was working on the wrong side of the work, but I took that out, redid it, and I am back on track. I'm back around, and now change colors. I cut my yarn. I'm going to bring in the new by slip stitching through both loops. We'll be working into both all the way around. So bring in the new color and just pull that tail in through and then through the loop on your hook. And I always like to secure that by making a slip knot, left over right, right over left, or the other way around, does not matter. You can crochet over these tails a little bit at the beginning if you like to secure them, and then I tuck them in to get them out of my way. And here we get to do a little more math. Oh boy, aren't you excited? But I have worked it all out for you, so no worries. All right, on the small pumpkin, okay, grab your pen and paper again. Here we go. For size small, we did 20 rows, which gave us 30 single crochets all the way around. We are going to work one spike stitch in every 6th stitch around, which will give us 5 of these little spikes. Okay, so we're going to work a single crochet each of the first 5, and then one front post double crochet spike stitch 2 rows down. I'm going to work those with you. Just wanted to give you the numbers first. For the medium, where you did 24 rows and 36 single crochets around, you're going to work one spike stitch in every 6th stitch around. That will give you 6 spikes. For the largest pumpkin, where we worked 28 rows, giving us 42 single crochets all the way around, you are again going to work one spike in every 6th stitch, and that will give you 7 spikes all the way around. Okay, and then our beginning chains is what helps create the height for the extra fill to also make your pumpkins different sizes. All right, so I am working the smallest. We're going to chain 1 single crochet into the first 5 stitches, counting that very first stitch. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then in the very next we're going to work that front post double crochet 1, 2 rows down. Okay, right in line as much as you can from that first stitch. So we're going to work front to back, insert your hook, come around the back of the stitch and up, yarn over, pull up a loop nice and high to the height of your single crochets, and then finish that double crochet. All right, the stitch behind, you will see unworked, belongs to that front post double crochet because we did not work into the top of a stitch, we worked around it. So you will see the stitch to the right that's been worked. Do not work into the front post double crochet stitch, or that will cause an increase. We're going to work into the next, beginning with our 5 single crochets again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, and then 1 front post double crochet spike stitch, 1, 2 rows down. And if the stitch below is too wide or is offset a little bit, then just go in and around a portion of it, as long as it's thick enough to really anchor that stitch, because if you go too wide, it's going to pull your spike stitch a little bit too much over to one side or the other. And, you know, pumpkins are unique. They have their own shape and characteristics to them. They're not just perfect and symmetrical, and neither are we, and that's what makes us all unique and individual. And it's okay if it's not perfect. Okay, so then again, go to the next stitch and work the 5 if you're doing the small like me, or the other numbers that I gave you for the different sizes. So here's my 4th and my 5th. And then in the next, front post double crochet, 2 rows down. Okay, you continue on with this repeat all the way around, and after your 5th stitch, or whichever you're working the very last, will should bring you right up next to the beginning stitch, and you will just work that post here. I will meet you there and we'll do that together. Here I am back around already, and this last stitch I am going to work in between the first and the last. Excuse me, it's a little dry today. And the second down, and I'm going to pull a stitch from the right and a stitch from the left and just work that right in. Okay, then slip stitch to the beginning single crochet, and now chain 1, single crochet in the first, and then all the way up to the front post double crochet, and then work 1 single crochet front post around that double crochet front post. Okay, and again, front, insert your hook around the front post stitch and single crochet, and then carry on with your next 5 single crochets, beginning with the very next stitch. One front post single crochet around that double crochet front post into the very next stitch. You repeat, do your 5 or whatever your number, and then single crochet front post around the double crochet, and then repeat all the way around. Last stitch around will be the last single crochet front post. Okay, and then we're getting on the home stretch, kids. All right, slip stitch to that first single crochet, chain 1, and then now we're going to single crochet all the way around with a decrease. That's going to help draw this in so that when we cinch it closed, you will have less bulk, and then that will give you the option from there. I'm going to show you then how we will create either the self stem that looks like it grows out of the top, or if you want to leave a little opening for a stick, cinnamon stick. And when we cinch that closed, we're not going to pull that taut all the way. We are going to secure that opening which will leave us the base for doing either option. All right, so now for the decrease. So what we're going to do for the different decrease sizes, for the smallest pumpkin, we're going to decrease single crochet 2 together on every 4th and 5th stitch. For the medium, you will single crochet 2 together for every 5th and 6th stitch. And for the large, every 6th and 7th stitch together. Okay, so here I'm going to start over there. There's the chain 1. So we're going to, for the smallest, work the first 3 single crochets in each of these 3 stitches, beginning with the first. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to single crochet the next 2, the 4th and 5th. So you insert your hook, pull up a loop, do the same, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, and that is your decrease. And that's what you repeat all the way around. So for the small, again, you will single crochet into each of the next 3, and into the next 2, the 4th and 5th, you will do a single crochet decrease. Okay, 1, 2, 3. There's the 4th and the 5th together. And then I'm going to slip stitch to the beginning single crochet. As far as how much yarn you need to cut, I would say double your circumference around to do our cinching closed of this portion, and to secure that, make sure it doesn't come undone, and weave in a little bit. But I don't weave in all my ends. I'm just going to poke that in as long as they're nice and secure, and use that as part of my stuffing. Anyway, go ahead and thread that tail end of the yarn you just cut. And what I like to do when I'm cinching in something, whether it's for a beanie type hat, I'm going to turn this inside out, because that way when I draw that in tight, it's going to bring the cinched portion inward, rather than if I worked from the outside, it's going to pull it upward, and then you have that little kind of bump lump at the top. So this way it's just smooth and all going down to the inside like that. Okay, so then, because I'm inside out, I want to work in the direction where the yarn is going that I just pulled through. So I'm going to work in every other stitch and just do a running or a basting stitch. So from the inside to out, skip over one, outside to in to out, out to in, through both loops, all the way around, pull that through, and then I just cinch a little bit as I go, and that way I don't have to draw it in too tight at the end and risk breaking my yarn. And if you want, from where you started, you can always pop that same night, move the stitch marker and use that again for here, so that way you know where your beginning is. And then now if you are working, going to do the little stick, then you cinch that in. And know, okay, that's about where I want it. You can use your finger to hold it there, just don't stab yourself. And then again, in and out, and that's going to help keep that in place and secure it. And then once you have that, give it another little tug, and then work it in the opposite direction, just like you're weaving in your ends. You can knot it somewhere in there a couple of times, cut your yarn, you're done. You can put your little stem back in there. Okay, and then you would move on to the very last step, closing up the bottom. Super easy to do. And if you want to make that self pumpkin, now you would feed the needle through, turn it right side out. Okay, open that just ever so slightly, and if you are going to use the same yarn because this is the yarn that you've cinched it in, you would insert your hook, and you can go down a hook size, which I do recommend for creating the stem, so that the size, the shape and texture is going to be a little bit different because you're using a smaller hook, and that's going to give you a little bit of visual separation from the stem to the top portion. Then you would just insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then you can just chain one, and then you just continue on. Okay, I'm going to cut my yarn, and then now I'm going to grab my other yarn, and this is where you have a lot of freedom to just kind of play, use your own creativity to create the stem however you want. You can make it as wide with fewer decreases at the beginning, and decrease, and then maybe do a few rounds of just single crochet all the way around, and then you can decrease if you want a little bit more tapering, and that's all we're going to do is taper. And I'm going to work back to that Lion Brand 24/7. The way that it is plied, spun, it's a very dense yarn, and it does not loft up, and that is going to give more of a stem-like, to me, appearance. And you can stuff yours if you want it to, if you want like a thicker squatty one, or if you don't want to, which I did not hear, it gives you the ability to really shape that with your fingers by just squishing it. So you can make it more tall and narrow, have one that curves over more, or you can just leave it however it comes out, like that. So you have a little more flexibility with a more dense yarn. And a thinner yarn. If you have one that's thinner, that's also going to give the differences in texture and appearance from the rest of your pumpkin. Alright, so you can insert your hook any place. I'm just going to go next to where I had cinched that in, and I'm going to leave that hanging because I might want to re-cinch this a little bit more. Okay, so just go ahead, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then chain one to lock that in, and then single crochet in the first stitch, and then we're going to do a single crochet, maybe like a couple single crochets, and then a single crochet decrease, two together. I want to close that up a little. One single crochet in each of the next two, and then a single crochet decrease. Okay, so it's just, you can just play around however many you want to decrease. There's really no rules with this, set rules or anything. It's just entirely up to you how you want to do that. You go ahead and slip stitch to the beginning, and then chain one single crochet. And I'm going to go ahead and do a decrease in each all the way around this time. That's up to you. I like both with the stick and creating my own stem. The stick is certainly easy, but I think this gives a really nice, complete, finished look to it. That's my favorite. I think that's also kind of fun. So I just wanted to give you both options if you needed to kind of whip some out and be real quick about it. Right, here I am back to the beginning. Again, slip stitch to the beginning, single crochet, chain one. And I think now I'm going to do, maybe a decrease in every other. There's one decrease and a single, another decrease and a single. And if you wind up with an extra one at the end, you can decide how you want to do that. If you want to do an extra decrease back to back, or just one more single. And there I am back around that quickly. Slip stitch again, chain one, and say maybe this one, because I've narrowed it, I just want to do one single crochet all the way around. Back to the beginning, I'm going to slip stitch chain one, and I'm going to go around again with just a single crochet. This way, you see, you can make each one unique with its own personality. Okay, so the height, that's entirely up to you. All right, I'm going to go one more round, and then I'm going to show you how I close that off, okay? Okay, so now I'm just going to slip stitch and just do a little decrease back into the first, the second stitch, just going to decrease in each again all the way around. And if you don't want to go down yet another hook size, you can just draw your yarn in as you complete the stitch and cinch that in pretty tight, but as you get tight, that's where the smaller hook, I'm going to just give that an extra tug, comes in handy. And then I'm going to slip stitch into that first single crochet. Okay, and that closed it up. And now I cut my yarn. You don't need too much there. And then grab a yarn needle, pull up my yarn without knotting it. Okay, and then I'm going to go back inside, pick another stitch to run that through. I mean, you can just run it around if you want. That's okay, doesn't really matter as long as you secure it. Run it through, and then down in between the stitches through to the inside to secure that. And you can just secure, don't pull it tight though. I'm just going to secure the end of that yarn by just gently weaving that in down on the inside, and then back the opposite direction, and just make sure I catch the top stitches and not down below, because then you're going to misshape your stem. Okay, and then again, I'm just going to leave that to as part of my stuffing. Then you can take your hook if you want, poke that back out. Oops, not that far. Back out if you need to. And what you can do also, if you like, you turn it inside out. If you have a long enough tail, you can go back around and just weave around these a little bit. Pull that in, draw it in a little bit, and it'll close up those holes if you want to. Then you can find the tail from where we cinched in at the beginning, and then you can draw that in even more, as much as you like to, for however much shaping that you want. I like a little, but not too much, because I like the separation from the base of the stem where that begins, but that's up to you. And then what I would just do is just take my yarn needle again, back to the bigger size here, and just probably go in the opposite direction, weave that through a little bit. with what I have left over of this tail. Just secure that from where I cinched that in, secure that in place. Okay. That's what I did with my others, and they have not come undone. You know, I'm not going to play Nerf ball with them. So I'm just going to be sitting, hanging around for decoration. Okay, it's nice and secure. Just leave that in to stuff. All right, and then I'm going to take my stuffing, which is my not favorite polyfill. Oh, you could even use, I just thought of some, I just take a piece, a blob, and just start stuffing. You know, if you have a sock that doesn't belong to another sock, you know how that goes? They just disappear, your dryer eats them. You could use a sock and stuff the sock with the fiber fill, or a couple socks in there for that matter. Okay, and you can just stuff it to the shape that you like, the fullness that you like. Okay, keep going however you want to do that. Get your shape. I just play around with it until I am satisfied, and then I'm going to take a piece, small piece, doesn't take much, just to go around, and we're going to do the same that we did before. I'm just going to go in from the back, leave a little bit of a tail, and go in again like every other stitch. Thereabouts. Doesn't have to be exact. I'm just doing a running stitch. In and out, in and out. Okay. I'll meet you at the beginning. And then you can just pull the two together like that if you like. Pull those closed, and then there we go. As tightly as you can without breaking your yarn. Okay, and then I'm going to join the two sides together, and then you can just shape this however you like. It's kind of cute. I like how sometimes they curl over. That's why I made this one a little bit extra long. Okay. So what you can do once you get that cinched as tight as you can get it, then you can knock that off a little bit and then bury that on the inside. See, that helps to close it. Another square knot, right over left, left over right, and then you can just take your yarn needle, we go into the next stitch and across to the other side, just at the as close to the center as possible. Go on one side and then run your yarn through and do this back to just over to the other side. But if you want to put in like a little sachet or something, how I had suggested at the beginning, you would do this before you close this up. Okay, and then just, that's it. And then just bury your ends, okay? And then cut them, you know, just weave them in a little bit as usual. And then if there's a spot where you have a little too much of a separation from where the decrease is, you can just take a fat blunt yarn needle and just pull that stitch over a little bit, poke that back in there, and that just covers it right up. can pull out your stem a little more at the base if you want, however you want to do that. Okay, well there you have it. One of my little contributions for this autumn season. I hope you enjoy making this. I hope you will, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I know some parts were a little bit unconventional, but sometimes we just have to improvise to bring the creation we have in our minds to fruition. And since Lucy likes collecting sticks too, we went out collecting all sorts of earthly autumn elements for our table display and found a lot of interesting pieces of moss, pine cones of different shapes and sizes and types, and even a few berries along the way. Take care, everyone. Have a beautiful day or evening wherever you are, and I will see you soon.